Imagine this. One broken promise changes everything. One leaked message. Zero trust left.
Trust takes years to build, but only seconds to destroy.
We have all seen it happen. A dedicated, top-performing employee suddenly stops going the extra mile. They stop volunteering for projects, stop offering ideas, and drop output to the absolute bare minimum required to keep their job. When this happens, leadership almost always points to the same culprit. They assume the worker has lost their ambition, or that a sudden wave of laziness has washed over them. But psychologists have a different term for this exact behavior. They call it malicious compliance. It is a silent rebellion where a person strictly follows the rules of their job description, but intentionally withholds all passion and extra effort. To understand why people actually do this, we need to leave the modern office and look at a centuries-old fishing tradition from ancient China. It is a management lesson known as the cormorant dilemma. This shift suggests that the unwritten rules of the workplace, the invisible glue that keeps people engaged, have started to fail. For thousands of years, fishermen navigating the rivers of China relied on a very specific partnership. They trained local diving birds, called cormorants, to hunt for them. Looking at this simplified cross-section of a cormorant's neck, you can see how the practice works. The fisherman places a solid copper ring around the bird. The ring is fitted so that it physically blocks any large catch from passing down the bird's throat. The bird does the heavy, dangerous labor. It dives deep into the water, secures a large silver fish, and then returns to the surface to surrender that catch to the fisherman. In exchange for that surrender, the fisherman immediately reaches into his bucket and gives the bird a smaller fish, one perfectly sized to slip right past the copper ring. This practice endured for generations because the system was balanced. The strict physical constraint of the copper ring was offset by a guaranteed fair reward for the work actually performed. The dilemma begins when a fisherman decides he wants a higher profit margin. Driven by greed, he calculates that if he stops paying the bird, he can keep every single large fish for himself. So he changes the deal. When the cormorant brings up a heavy catch, the fisherman takes the prize, but instead of handing over a small fish, he tosses the bird useless bones and scraps. The bird doesn't squawk, it doesn't fight back or attack the fisherman. It simply sits quietly on the boat and accepts the new conditions. But the very next morning, the dynamic shifts. The cormorant refuses to dive into the deep currents. Instead, it paddles in the shallows, picking off tiny shrimp and minnows that can slide past its ring. The fisherman's basket goes completely empty. Looking at this diagram of a balancing scale, we can translate this into human psychology. That copper ring represents a written contract. It transforms into a formal employment document, which only guarantees that a worker will show up and meet their minimum baseline requirements. On the other side of the scale, we add the small reward fish. This morphs into a glowing handshake, representing the unwritten contract of mutual trust. When an employer honors this side of the scale, workers give their extra effort. But if you take that unwritten reward away, the effort that goes beyond the job description stops being profitable for the worker. Breaking that deal effectively ends the cycle of voluntary effort. The moment an employer cuts fair compensation or stops showing respect, the unwritten trust is gone. The fallout is immediate. Employees retreat into malicious compliance. They execute the exact survival duties outlined in their job description, while withholding the creative problem-solving and dedication that actually make a company grow. Management often falls into the illusion of control. They believe that treating talented people as easily replaceable subordinates will somehow force them to produce high-level results, but that rarely happens. When talented workers realize they are being exploited, they either pack up and leave for a better opportunity, or they stay, and you watch the organization slowly seize up and shatter from the inside. People who show up early and work diligently do so because they feel valued in a mutually beneficial relationship. They do not do it out of desperation or a lack of other options. The final penalty lands on the leaders who failed to respect their team. By trying to squeeze out every last drop of profit, they are left with an empty basket. Long-term success depends on maintaining the balance between what is written on paper and what is felt in the room. If this story resonated with you, comment "Trust Matters" below and share this with your team.
If you want to understand how your mind really works, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Welcome to Mind Decoding. Decode your mind.